Okay, next we're just going to pull on this plastic housing that houses the wiring harness. Okay, next we're going to disconnect these two connectors, and this should completely disconnect the wiring harness from the left side of the cylinder head. Okay, next we're going to remove our ignition coil housing, which looks like to be held in place by these two nuts on this side and a couple bolts on that side. Okay, next it's time for these two at the back. They're also 12mm. There's one. Here's the second one. Okay, with our ignition coils already disconnected, we should be able to just pull on this and get this out of the way, like that. Okay, with our wiring harness out of the way, it's time to remove our thermostat housing. And our thermostat housing is held in place by these two 12mm nuts. Okay, with these two nuts removed, we should be able to remove our thermostat housing. If it's giving you a hard time, you can always tap it with a rubber mallet to knock it loose. Then take it out. There we go. Let's take that guy out. Okay, next it's time to take this side of the housing off from the cylinder head, and this side is connected to the cylinder head by, I think, this nut here and then that bolt right there. Okay, so before we remove that thermostat housing completely from the cylinder head, we're gonna have to remove this coolant hose. Twist it loose. Yeah, make sure you get your catch pan underneath there. Okay, next it's time to remove our valve cover, which is held in place by these 10mm bolts, just all the way around the circumference. Before we do that though, we're going to remove our throttle cable. Just slide it out of these little housings right here. And then we're just going to push it back here. Next we're going to remove this vacuum line. Okay, so after removing all the bolts, which are 12 total, we're gonna we can remove our valve cover gasket. This might be stuck on there a little bit, so you can gently pry it from the corners a little bit, like this, and then it should just there we go. Okay, so with the valve cover removed, we're gonna start removing the intake manifold. Just gonna separate it from the cylinder head and push it back, since there's then plenty of room back there. Basically, it's held in by these nuts that go into the studs that are in the cylinder head. I think there is 1, 2, 3, 4 on top, and then probably like 5 on the bottom. I'm gonna do the 2 on these corners first, then the other 2 on that corner. Then I'm gonna get underneath the car and do all the ones on the bottom. Then probably there's going to be a bracket that connects this intake manifold to the block. Going to loosen that, then come back on top, remove these 2 nuts, and then push this back and get it out of the way. I'm gonna loosen with my my wrench, and then once they're loosened, you can just remove them by your hand. And here's the lower one. Next we come to the right side of the cylinder head, and there's 2 connectors we need to disconnect. This is this one on top. They're all the clip-on types. Just press on those clips and then you just pull on them. This is for the camshaft sensor, and this one I'm not too sure about, but just remove the same. Okay, to remove this lower nut, we need to actually remove this connector is in the way, so we need to get it out of this bracket. So we just press on this and pull, and it should just slide out. And here's this one, and this bracket comes out with it. good to make a note of where this goes. Okay, next we're gonna jack up the front of the car. I've already got this side jacked up. I'm actually gonna remove the wheel from this side as well, since later on we're gonna be putting the engine atop that center, and we need to be able to get a wrench on the crankshaft bolt, and yeah. And so I'm just gonna lift up that side as well. Don't forget to apply your emergency parking brakes and choke both your rear wheels. Okay, now we're underneath the engine, looking up, and we need to, in order to be able to push the intake manifold back when we remove all the nuts that are holding it into the cylinder head, we need to disconnect these two bolts that are for the support bracket that goes all the way up to the intake manifold. Okay, and these are 14mm, I believe. One, and here's the second one. Okay, now it's time to remove those remaining nuts on top, two of which you can see here, and the other one is over there behind well, this stuff is covering it, but we need to remove those 3 nuts, and then we should be able to push back on the intake manifold and disconnect it from the cylinder head. Second one, and the last one I'm probably not going to be able to get it on camera because I'm probably need both my hands. Okay, now we're back onto the top. We're gonna remove these last 2 remaining nuts that are holding this intake manifold to the cylinder head. Okay, so with those 2 nuts removed, we should be able to just slide this back. There we go. Okay, next we're going to start removing our exhaust manifold. First we need to get this heat shield off. It's held in place by these 4 12mm bolts. And actually before we do that, we're going to remove this cable for the O2 sensor from its bracket, so we can just kind of push this out and slide it. You can also disconnect the connector for the O2 sensor. Just lift this and kind of get this out of the way. Okay, since I'm just planning to just pull on the exhaust manifold and remove it from the cylinder head, once I remove all the nuts that are holding it in, I'm going to go ahead and remove this nut that's holding this exhaust pipe to the bottom of the engine. Also, make sure you have a jack stand ready here for later when you remove the nuts for the exhaust manifold, and you're going to drop it down and have this support the exhaust pipe. Okay. Okay, this is a 17mm bolt, and you should probably use an impact gun to remove it. Okay, and here's a look at our exhaust manifold, and there's one problem. That nut on this side, this power steering pump, is in the way. So we actually had to remove this anyway, since we need to disconnect this bracket from that goes into the cylinder head from the engine, I think. But anyway, yeah, the next step is going to be removing our power steering pump. Okay, so in order to remove the power steering pump, we need to remove 2 bolts. One is on the bottom side facing the right hand side, and then there's one on top facing the left hand side of the car. By the way, once you loosen up this upper one, you can just push it in and remove the power steering belt from the pulley. Okay, next we just get our power steering pump out of here and set it aside. Okay, next we need to remove this bracket that's got our cylinder head connected to the block on this side, and to another bracket on this side, and it's held in by these 3 bolts up here. I have 1 bolt on there and 2 bolts on this side. Okay, these are all 14mm as well. Okay, and next the bottom bolt. Okay, and here's the bottom bolt. This one's a different size, so make a note. Okay, next is time for these two side bolts. These two bolts, these are 12 millimeter, and after these we should be able to get this bracket out of the way. We can probably still get away with, even if we don't remove these two bolts and remove the bracket completely, we can probably get away with removing the cylinder head, but just give us more room and make it life easier when it's time to put the cylinder head back on. There we go.